Last year we did a complete start to finish pruning of this peach tree, and I wanted to do a follow-up video showing how well this tree responded to the heavy maintenance pruning that we did a year ago. So if you want to watch the original video, I'll put the link in the description, but let's just go through this real quick and talk about what we have here and how this tree responded to last year's pruning. When I prune peach trees, I use 8 steps. There's 8 things that I prioritize, and I usually start with the bottom and I work my way up the tree. And so the first thing is removing suckers. And usually if you do them right, if you just kind of pull the suckers from the base of the tree every year consistently, they'll stop coming up. And that first step is done. The second thing I do is I like to remove some of the lower 2 branches so that we can build this canopy up a little ways. And so what we'll do next is we'll remove those lower 2 branches because they're pretty close to the ground. It's kind of hard to access this tree with those lower branches. Plus, once they're laden with fruit, these branches are probably laying on the ground. So we'll cut those lower 2 branches, and then we cut the leader. Now see, this tree has a pretty tall leader, and if we step back and look at the tree, we have a lot of growth coming off the south side, and the north side is kind of off balance a little bit. It's kind of tall, but there's not a lot of growth growing out. And so what I'm going to do with the second part of step 2 is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut back some of these taller branches and encourage more outward growth. So I'll pick one of these branches growing out and I'll cut the leader back to one of the outward growing branches. So that's the second part of step 2. Step 3 is removing the water sprouts in apples and pears, but in peaches, it's the brand new growth that we want. That's what has all the fruit on it, is that last year's water sprouts. We skip step 3. Step 4 is the 4 Ds. We're going to get rid of the dead, the damaged, and the dying branches. And oftentimes those are in the middle where they didn't get enough sunlight. Sometimes you get little tips of branches like this one here that died back that need clipped out. But we do the 4 Ds, the dead, dying, diseased, and damaged branches get removed in step 4. Step 5 is crossing branches. And you can see there's often branches that are overlapping each other, like some of these small ones in here. And those get removed. We usually cut one or the other or both branches in order to make room so that each branch has enough room to grow. And if you do it right and you cut the branches in the right direction, you really don't have a lot of crossing branches because you're pointing the tree in the direction that you want it to go, and you're giving it space. In addition to crossing branches, we want to remove like parallel branches that are growing in the same space, and some of the branches that are growing in towards the middle. We don't want to get too crazy about cutting branches out of the middle. The reason being is it's one of the biggest mistakes that gardeners make when pruning open center fruit trees. And if you want to watch that video, I'll put the link in the description. The 6th step is tipping. All this new growth, once we've kind of thinned out a lot of the unnecessary growth, we want to tip back each and every branch on this peach tree. And what that will do is similar to what's been done here. There's a little bit of dead. But once we make a pruning cut, it stimulates more growth. And that new growth is what's going to be fruitful next year. So it's important that we tip back each and every one of these branches, leaving 3 to 5 nodes, depending on the size of the branch. Something like this that's got some girth, we could probably do more like 7 to 9 buds. So that's step 6. And step 7, we're just looking for some of the weak, spindly branches. Sometimes when we're done pruning, there's still just some of these branches that are kind of weak and they're not going to support peaches. So we got to thin some of them out. Also, there's something called linewood or lion's tails, where you have a branch that has no living nodes except for just at the very tip. And those kind of branches are not very effective because there's just nothing living along the edge of the branch except for right at the end. Any fruit that grows on that tip is just too heavy, and then you run the risk of that branch breaking. The last final step to pruning is usually when I'm done, I got to step back and walk around the tree and do a 360-degree walk around to make sure the tree looks balanced, that everything is aesthetically correct. And sometimes you have to do a little bit more pruning. If you missed a few branches or one side of the tree looks heavier than the other, then you'll want to continue to prune the heavier side. So you can see I pulled the mulch away from the base of the tree. There were no suckers, so I didn't worry about that. I removed the lower 2 branches to build that canopy up. I just felt like the canopy was getting a little too low. And then I removed a lot of the crossing branches and the branches that were growing in towards the middle, parallel branches. I removed the dead, damaged, diseased branches, broken branches. And then I tipped each and every branch back, and you can see I was very aggressive. I cut a lot of bigger branches out of here. And then there were just some weak, spindly branches in there that just weren't going to be very productive. They were just kind of there, not going to do much. I got those removed. And then I walked around the tree. I even noticed that the one side was a little bit tall. It was out of place, so I had to make one more tip off the top to kind of reduce the height and balance out that tree. But you can see now it's a very well balanced tree. Still a little bit empty on this side, which is typical because that's the shaded side. That's the northeast corner of the tree. And so what I did is I cut that top back, and I'm pointing all these branches out. All these branches are pointed out to eventually fill in that half of the tree. And then this side of the tree, I was more aggressive on the outward branches, and I pointed them up. And so forcing the north side of the tree out and the other side a little more up. And so we have all these little stubby branches left. There's a lot of good fruiting wood on these new branches, so we should be able to get a lot of peaches still, but every branch has plenty of space in between each one to collect the sunlight it needs to fully ripen those peaches. Being aggressive like this also is going to guarantee next year we have a new big flush of brand new growth, which is important because that's where the peaches produce the fruit. And so those are the 8 steps that I use to prune fruit trees. I'm gonna watch the video that we did about this tree last year. Again, the link will be in the description. Thanks for watching.